Hello and welcome to this episode of Ecom Expander Secrets on this podcast. And I'm thoroughly excited to be joined by a great colleague of mine, Ryan Murray. So just before we kick off with what it's going to be about today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. My name's Andy, or Drew Cooper, Head of Sales at Expandy, the Global E-commerce experts. And we are going to talk through today of the 8 most commonly asked questions over the past 2 months from our sellers who are expanding into Europe. So hopefully this will give you some insight into some of the pain points we were experiencing and some of the common themes and questions that come out from our discovery calls that we hold. So welcome, excited to get going with this. Ryan, over to you.
Thanks for that introduction, Drew. Yeah, my name's Ryan. I'm one of the business development managers at Expandly, the global e-commerce expert. So often the first point of contact for international e-commerce sellers looking to expand into Europe. So that's exactly why I'm on the call today, to touch upon the most commonly asked questions by e-commerce sellers looking to make that journey. So thanks, Drew.
Fantastic. No, great. Awesome to have you here. So just to give you a little bit of background. So we're speaking with tens of e-commerce sellers every day, international sellers who are looking to expand their brands into the UK and Europe. Now, that initial thought process of doing it, of course, comes up with some lots of questions and often some preconceived challenges, and we spend the time going through what that looks like and the journey, and then how we can remove those pain points with minimal effort from the seller, and also with these. So these are the 8 most common questions we've had recently. So there's lots of hot topics in here and stuff that hopefully you're going to find valuable. So the first question, these are direct, so they've been held from discovery calls themselves. So, and this is, I'm going to ask this directly to Ryan now. So Ryan, we know that Amazon has recently communicated that the GPSR regulation is being enforced as of December 2024. So what does this mean if you're a new seller and or current seller looking to expand?
Okay, so yeah, starting from the 13th of December 2024, Amazon will be enforcing the new and updated general product and safety regulation. So as a current seller or somebody who's looking to expand into Europe, you must ensure your products comply with said regulations. And things that the GPSR includes are things like product safety, so ensuring your products meet the GPSR safety standards, so including proper labeling and risk assessments with your products. The responsible person requirement. So if you lack an irresponsible person, you must appoint a responsible person within the EU to handle the compliance documentation and liaise with the relevant compliance authorities. And then you have the documentation which accompanies your product too. So maintaining and providing necessary documentation, such as the declarations of conformity, technical files, test reports, things like that. And then you also have market surveillance. So being ready for potential product testing and inspection by authorities within Amazon and outside of Amazon too. And then updating your listings as well. So update your product listings to reflect compliance requirements within the GPSR. So the documentation that I've mentioned, responsible person information and so forth. But the key thing really here, Drew, is to obviously start preparing for this now to avoid any disruptions and to ensure smooth selling on Amazon, obviously come December and then heading into 2025. But obviously where this is a requirement for December, there's more and more people looking to get that resolved sooner rather than later, shall we say. Awesome.
Thanks for that. Super helpful. And I think the responsible person piece is a pretty commonly known now. And whilst it has been product specific previously, mainly relating to CMAR products, obviously that terminology now is going to be extended, right, to GPSR regulation as of 2024. I think also there's a couple of amendments made to that as well. So some key things that sellers are going to need to take into consideration are that each product's going to need a risk assessment, and that's going to have to be documented and held on file for 10 years. Whoever name is on the product is therefore the manufacturer, then therefore they'd take the responsibility in their domestic region, and then we'll share that responsibility with the responsible person. They'll also now need to provide a company-headed mandate stating that who their responsible person is. So with their reputable company that they use, they'll need to actually document that, which is unusual. It used to always be in the packaging, as you mentioned. However, they're going to need a letterhead to that tune as well. So great, thank you for that, Ryan. So the GPSR regulation being the hot topic at the moment as it comes into force in. I mean, Christmas is going to come around super quick, isn't it? So before you know it, we're going to be landed on that. But in terms of other regulations, so take GPSR out of the equation, other regulations that sellers entering Europe should be aware of. Talk us through some high-level ones of them and what the differences are.
Sure. So I guess the best place to start with the compliance requirements for trading in the EU and in the UK and EU is really dependent on your product category, and the requirements for your product category are determined by both the physical product and its labeling. So things within the physical product includes what the product's made of, so its composition, and how the product's made or what the product's made of will determine obviously certain regulations which govern that product. You also have the safety standards, which we touched upon within the GPSR. They obviously need to comply with UK and EU safety standards, and then the functionality and performance of the product. So items like medical devices or PPE must undergo performance testing to ensure they function safely and effectively. But then you've also got the labeling the product on the flip side. So the markings displayed on the labeling. So many products require CE marking to show that they meet EU safety, health and environmental protection requirements. And then you also have the information disclosed within the product. So that could be on the physical labeling itself, so the exterior packaging or the label, as well as inserts or leaflets that accompany the product. And they can display information such as ingredients or allergens in food, for example. But then you also have the instructions and warnings, so the proper usage of the product, the safety warnings and care instructions as well. But in summary, the first step with any business or brand looking to achieve product compliance in Europe is to clearly identify the category of the product with which they are selling, because this may differ in Europe as compared to other places in the world. So once the category is defined through the physical product and labeling, the roadmap to achieving compliance will become much more clearer.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you for that, Ryan. I hope a decent overview on that. So, Ryan, far away, what's the next question commonly asked by international sellers?
Yes, so that kind of follows on quite nicely. So we've been hearing a lot or been receiving a lot of questions about what's called the digital product passport. So what is that, Drew, and what does it mean for sellers?
Yes, this is definitely some terminology and a service and product that's bounding around at the moment. However, in a lot of cases, being swept under the carpet and pushed to one side, as these are things often do until the deadline approaches, and then people panic to get it done. We had a digital product passport, so it's actually starting in Europe in 2026. However, as it stands at the moment, sellers will currently have until 2030 before it becomes a mandatory requirement, and it's not going to be for every product category. Just to note, so textiles and clothing is going to be one of the first ones. So definitely keep an eye on that as a placeholder. However, what is it? So a digital product passport. The easiest way for me to explain it is what you currently see on the packaging now when you purchase something is all the data associated with it. So you've generally got the product name, any claims, any marketing tools on there. You've got directions of use. You've got ingredients. You've got a loose level of traceability, generally with the manufacturing information on there or the responsible person. And then you've got some symbols, some illustrations, because that is the storefront, as it were, for that package. Now, what the digital product passport is being brought in to do is to be able to hold that information in a centralized place through a QR code, where you can have all of your traceability information, manufacturing information, the origin of the product, what it's made out of, the ingredients, all held centrally in one place, which obviously can hold a lot more data than a product package. Excuse me, and allow you to enter other information that you might not necessarily want to or be able to fit on your packaging. So it's going to be a combination. You can have illustrations on there. You can have traceability on a map of where your goods, your raw materials have come from, and then you can put in there some sales tactics if you want. There's going to be a combination of a variety of things, but it's going to be a game changer from storage and education to a consumer on everything to do with your product. And the byproduct of that is you're then going to require less information on your packaging. So therefore, potentially that could, be quite fruitful in as much that you've got a small product. You don't need to have an insert or a peel and reveal label on it, which is additional cost. You can keep the aesthetics of your product packaging, the way you want, without having to squeeze additional information on if you're an international seller. You've got to conform to Canadian regulations, US, Europe. You've got to have 12 different languages on it. Consolidate all of that into an online channel. So lots more to come on that front. There'll be lots of changes, no doubt. So when we next speak, there'll probably be something I've said which is going to have changed. But as it stands at the moment, that's the basics of it. If you want to find out any more about that, then there's lots of information online, or you can speak to somebody who offers that as a service.
Brilliant. Yeah, really exciting, especially in the digitalized world. I mean, we're all carrying smartphones in your pockets, so I see no reason as to why a QR code can't help alleviate all of that kind of fuss.
Absolutely. And I did see the percentage actually on people who currently hold smartphones, and I thought it would be a lot higher than it is. Yeah, I mean, you're right. In this day and age, most people have got access to a camera on their phone, which will take them to an internet page. So why not? Let's move into the era where we can hold that information.
100%.
So these are segueing quite nicely, actually. So we talk about multiple languages, and therefore that is Europe. You've got several languages in Europe, or multiple languages in Europe, and therefore you need to consider that from a packaging regulation. But what about from a VAT regulation? So the question asked generally is, if I'm selling in Europe, can I hold just one VAT number to cover my sales throughout Europe? How would you go about answering that one?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's quite a broad one, but in direct answer to your question there, Drew, you can hold one VAT number in Europe and trade in other countries. However, the most important thing to note within that is wherever you're storing goods, so physically storing goods in Europe, that's where you're going to require a VAT number. So there are various programs involved with trade throughout Europe, which can allow you to hold one VAT number and trade into other European countries, or you have programs such as Amazon's Pan-EU program, where you have VAT in multiple countries. But yeah, there's various options with regards to how you operate with VAT in Europe and use that to obviously access the market. So
okay, cool. But you mentioned the core thing there is about where you're storing goods. That's the critical piece to being able to file your VAT.
Yes, certainly. Yeah. So if you're storing goods, for example, in the UK, then you're going to require a UK VAT number to file against when obviously importing and trading goods within the UK. Now, if, for example, you're looking at the Amazon Pan-EU program, which is the UK and the majority of Europe, you will automatically need to register for VAT, as Amazon will be storing your inventory in up to 8 fulfillment centers across Europe. So therefore, you'll automatically need to register for VAT in as many as 8 European countries, as opposed to just the one. But yeah, the original countries included within the Amazon program are the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Czech Republic. However, where the UK is no longer part of the European Union, Amazon have since added the Netherlands and Sweden as part of their program, so making a total of 8 European countries. So therefore, the Amazon Pan-EU 8. But yeah, many of the clients we've worked with and have considered the Amazon Pan-EU 8 too big a step when first expanding into Europe, and have opted for expansion into maybe a single country or a combination of 3 countries to kickstart their expansion journey. And there are many programs such as One-Stop Shop or Import One-Stop Shop, which will help sellers navigate the complexities of registering and reporting in multiple European countries.
Fantastic. I think, you segued nicely into One-Stop Shop, Import One-Stop Shop. I think that's definitely a conversation for a single podcast. Yeah, it's important to note, and I think that's definitely an option dependent on the sales channels and stuff you want to operate in, right?
Yeah,
it will depend on the individual seller as to what's right for them. Okay,
definitely. But ultimately, I think it's essential to understand that VAT is complex, being the regulations and requirements involved with VAT across Europe, and it's recommended that you consult with a tax professional or accountant to ensure compliance with all the laws and regulations within.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Nice.
Cool. So on to the next. So another question we've had of late is the newest regulation that sellers are asking about is EPR and WEEE. So they've a lot of been saying this is a bit of a minefield. So what does that mean for a seller currently trading in Europe or looking to expand in the future?
Yeah, sure. So EPR and WEEE, another regulation, an appropriate one that's come into force to support the end of life of goods, essentially, end of life of goods and packaging. Now, see, as the world, moves towards, a more sustainable way of life in terms of the packaging they use and what we're doing with it when we chuck it away, this is designed to attempt to combat. I mean, it will combat to some level, or it's a piece of a puzzle to combat, the sustainability element. So, in short, this is about when you purchase a product, when the end consumer decides to throw it away or dispose of it, what happens with that product? Where does it go? And how is it recycled, if applicable? But the seller's contribution to the cost of that. Okay, so for instance, a quick example, if you've got cardboard packaging, then you'll contribute towards that being thrown away and recycled into other cardboard packaging, and your contribution as a seller of that product will be relatively small because that's what we want. That's what we want to recycle. We want products in sustainable materials. If you decide to use single-use plastic, or you decide to use polystyrene, or then you're going to contribute a bit higher to what happens to that, because a lot of it will either go to landfill or not be recycled at all, or be semi-recycled and have to go through a processing. So it's done on weight generally. So you look at how much volume you're selling and how many, and then you'll pay a registration fee to only some countries at the moment, but it will be European-wide and no doubt internationally at some point, that you'll pay a registration fee and then you'll pay a contribution based on your anticipated volume of sales. And then similar to your VAT is your EPR support, or yourself will file your EPR, your EPR contribution, and then you'll either obviously have to pay more if you sold more or gain a rebate. So yes, and the WEEE is relating to batteries. So if you've got batteries in your product, then in a similar way, you pay for a contribution to disposal of them. We all know, particularly lithium-ion batteries, their end of life, they just get thrown away and get buried. So it's a contribution towards what your product's made out of, the ingredients of it, and what happens to it at the end of life. So again, it's a very broad subject. It's a necessity. It's a requirement, particularly if you want to sell in Germany and France at the moment. You have to do it. It's mandatory. So therefore, you want to trade in those regions, specifically Germany, being the biggest e-commerce market in Europe. You're going to want to be there if you're expanding into Europe. So therefore, you're going to have to dive into it. But use a service provider who is knowledgeable in it. It's small cost in the grand scheme of things, but also it's designed to make us all conscious about what our products are made out of, the raw materials, and what we're packaging them in.
Excellent. Yeah, but like you say, it's an environmental policy to essentially promote sellers to use more sustainable goods, or sustainable packaging, shall I say? And yeah, it's like I say, it's all calculated upon the amount they've traded. So
correct.
With relevance to that, it's not a particularly high cost regulation in comparison to maybe some others that are active throughout Europe.
No, absolutely. But keep an eye on it, and again, just seek some advice. It sounds far more scary than it is. And as we all know, anything compliance related, you mentioned compliance, you mentioned tax, VAT, instantly it's an area where people don't really want to touch it. But it's not, as long as you use somebody who knows what they're doing, you'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I agree. Cool.
And tax. So I mentioned the word tax, VAT, scary subject. So there we go. We'll no doubt touch on that in future ones. But so we're talking about Europe, Ryan. One of the questions which comes up super frequently and has done over some time, actually, not just the past couple of months, is when I'm going to Europe, where do I send my goods? So what's the favoured route into Europe? we know we split from the European Union now. So for people that don't know, we split from the European Union, so therefore the UK and Europe are deemed separate, separate regions now. So there's the movement of trade between the two from a shipping perspective is slightly different to what it was. So in this question, we're specifically talking about Europe. And people ask, where do I ship into? What's the favoured route? How do I get there? So if you can give us some insight into that, Ryan, that'd be super.
Of course. So, yeah, of course, there are various options for destination to ship to throughout Europe. Of course, the main factors is where do you want the goods to get to? Where's the end destination for those goods? But when shipping goods into Europe, importers often prefer to use ports that offer efficient customs clearance. They have streamlined logistics for entry into that specific country or region, and they also offer strategic locations for then the warehousing fulfillment of their goods once they've been cleared through customs and they're actually on the ground in the country. But two of the most popular routes of entry for international trade are the UK and the Netherlands. And within the UK, you've got various ports such as Southampton or Felixstowe, and even Plymouth in the southwest. And in the Netherlands, you have Rotterdam, which is often seen as one of the most efficient ports in Europe, alongside Amsterdam, the capital. And the reason the UK and the Netherlands are major hubs for international trade is because they offer, as mentioned, proximity to major markets. So the UK is well positioned to access major European cities such as Paris or Brussels and Amsterdam, as mentioned. And then the Dutch ports, such as Rotterdam and Amsterdam, are located in the heart of Europe, so they make it easy to access major European markets such as Germany or France, and then obviously back on the UK as well across the water. But then, as well as that, there's streamlined customs clearance in both locations. They have well-established customs clearance processes, making it easy for freight forwarders to then communicate with customs clearers and then actually get the goods into the country. So navigating those regulations. But alongside that, you've got the logistics and supply chain expertise. So like I said earlier, the UK and the Netherlands have a strong network of logistics providers, warehousing facilities and transportation companies as well, making it easy to manage your supply chain from the point the goods leave the port near your manufacturer to the point the goods arrive in Europe. So yeah, certainly recommend the UK and Netherlands, but alongside that, there are other countries as well, which are quite sophisticated for importation, such as France and others within.
Okay, nice. And in terms of like language barrier, so we know there's multiple languages in Europe spoken. Does this ever seem to be a problem? Shipping into different countries, we come across a lot of challenges surrounding communication.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, that's obviously why a lot of countries looking to expand into Europe opt to the UK to begin with, because obviously English is a very commonly spoken language throughout the world. Especially a lot of US sellers looking to make that jump. UK is a good place to start, not only for product compliance, as we've discussed, or VAT, but also for shipping regulations as well, and actually getting the goods into the country. That's for sure. The Netherlands, on the flip side of that, as mentioned, also, although Dutch is the native language in the Netherlands. English is also very commonly spoken as well, which is why Rotterdam port is seen as one of the most efficient ports in Europe. So not only from a customs clearance standpoint, but also from a language perspective. And then, like I say, very well positioned from a logistical standpoint as well.
Fantastic. Nice. Thank you.
Cool. So then on to question 7, I believe. So from what a lot of sellers understand, Amazon is not the most dominant marketplace in the European Union or in the UK for that matter. So what are your suggestions to understand and extend sales channels to unfamiliar marketplaces?
Sure. Yeah, this is, again, super common. So generally when we speak of international sellers, Amazon is generally dominant in the country, and not in all cases, but sort of broad brushing that a little bit, but in most cases it is. So the obvious choice, and of course the most sensible and the recommended choice, in fact, was when you expand into Europe, stay with what you know. Yeah, Amazon, have the same sort of standard operating procedures wherever you go in terms of the functionality of Amazon and how to, the usability of it. So absolutely when you're starting your expansion, stick with the marketplace, providing it's in the country, of course. Stick with the marketplace that. But when you're there and you're established, so typically it'll take between 1 to 2 years would be a broad estimate, is then start looking at other marketplaces you can tackle. So, in the US, there's two obvious ones that spring to mind. If we take the US example, you've got Amazon and Walmart. So you take them they'll probably be familiar, and you may be trading on both of them. You may decide to put all of your effort into Amazon. When you come to Europe, there are multiple other ones available, and in some cases, like the Netherlands, Amazon is pretty dormant, pretty non-existent. So therefore, if you want to trade directly in the Netherlands, you need to be on bol.com. So bol.com would be your option for the Netherlands. If you decide to go straight to Germany, no problem. Amazon's dominant there, the biggest marketplace in Europe. Stay with Amazon, but also there are others, throughout Europe that you need to be involved with if you want to dominate in those regions. Allegro, Fnac, eBay, a huge one throughout Europe, and similarly with the UK. There's some UK-based ones which, there's some software out there, not selling, but in the top of this screen here, and that could support with an omni-channel approach, which is highly recommended when starting your expansion. If you want to get to grow to 80% of your domestic sales, that's not going to happen just being on one marketplace. So you need to spread your wings and capture that market. What's a really interesting bit of data, which I haven't got any specifics to share today, sadly, but more than happy to if people want to reach out, is if you look at different marketplaces throughout Europe and their catchment, of sellers, very rarely do Amazon sellers conflict or cross over with eBay sellers or bol.com sellers or some UK-based marketplaces. They're generally a different type of client. So therefore, when you are coming to Europe, you're not going to be taken from Peter to pay Paul, as it were. You're going to be able to spread your sales volume evenly and capture new markets rather than have a crossover. So definitely look at doing some feasibility studies. So look at find somebody who can support you with identifying what's right for your product. Because of course I'm broad brushing it there, but if you're selling, German flags as an example, that's your niche market, then you're probably not going to do very well selling them on a Spanish platform in Spain. So think about getting a feasibility study done, finding out where's best, what marketplace is going to work for your products. Some marketplaces are obviously more specific to different product categories than others. So identify that. Once you've got that, then utilize some software in order to make that easy for you. The last thing you're going to want to do is to learn a whole new marketplace when you've got Amazon dialed right in. So if you use some software, they'll be able to push it out to another marketplace at essentially the hit of a button and then a little bit of tweaking.
Sounds good. Yeah, I can agree with you. More countries and more marketplaces. Of course, that doesn't have to happen overnight, but yeah, gradual process, incorporate it into your growth trajectory, and you'll only see positive results, I think. So great stuff. And then I believe the last question we have today, Drew, for you again, is when do sellers know that they're ready to expand? So when should they be pulling the trigger for this kind of project?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm going to give a loose answer to start, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of nitty gritty of a little bit of data. So the key thing with this is ensuring that you've got the appropriate resource and time allocation to give to the project. So it's not as easy as saying, okay, I'm doing 5 million in my domestic region. I want to go to Europe, and in 2 years, I want to be doing 5 million quid there. And all I need to do is just manage Amazon.co.uk and Amazon.e, and I'll be home and dry. Sadly, it's not as easy as that. You've got some hurdles to jump through to start with, for the product compliance, the VAT element, the shipping, understanding the customs clearance, being able to, so you're allocating some funds to be able to stock appropriately to ensure that you're not going to stock out when you get here. We're talking about typically coming halfway around the world and delivering, and inbounding your stock into a completely unfamiliar country here. So there's a lot of stuff to consider first. But in terms of, am I right? The really key thing here is appropriately resource, understand, seek some advice about what is going to happen. You know, what are the steps? What are the expectations? What do I need to do? How much inventory am I going to need? Where am I going to store it? You know, allocate a 3PL, whether you use it initially or not. You know, have these things set up so that you're prepared for what's going to happen. That's the critical piece. The next thing you understand is, financially, is your business ready? Is it in a position to be able to the resource piece will also fund the requirement of what it is to trade overseas, because you're going to double everything. Essentially, you're going to double your inventory ordering, you're going to double your shipping fees, whether it's air, sea freight. You're going to be, you know, instigating another customs agent potentially, and then you've got the fees associated with importation. You're going to be the storage fees. Amazon's fees differ depending on country, so you've got to take that into consideration. You've got the difference in conversion rate. You know, you've got if you're from the US, you've got the tax versus VAT. You know, the tax is added on and paid for by the seller. By the purchaser. You've got the VAT, which is inclusive, so you need to adjust those prices. So you need to make sure that your business is ready to be able to fund it. And therefore, what we find is typically you need to be doing about 1.5 million in your domestic country as a minimum in terms of turnover, and upwards of 5 million to go into Europe would be the dialed in range, and anywhere upwards of that really. But the resource thing, in terms of commitment to the European expansion, my suggestion is that you have a person, if not a couple of people dedicated to the program in order to manage it effectively. So if it goes into, you know, if you're already managing your domestic country, and albeit as successful, but it's just you managing it, then you are going to need some support. So look at those two things would be my advice. But then on top of all of that, drive and ambition to succeed, to be an e-commerce dominating brand. You need to be in Europe, and you need to go into it with 100% commitment.
Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, no, I took four key things away from there, Drew. So a roadmap to the expansion. So either learning that yourself or engaging another provider, and then resource in the form of obviously funding, people, and then of course, lastly, the actual drive to expand and succeed, which is key, ensuring you want your business to bring global domination. So brilliant, good stuff.
Fantastic. Well. Awesome. That wraps it up, I think. Hopefully that's been insightful. There's some key areas there. I mean, of course, if you want to know more, we'd be delighted to have some time spent with you and have a conversation about it, your European expansion. You can reach out to Ryan or myself. The links and stuff will be on these posts, on this podcast. And I don't know if you have anything further to say, Ryan?
No, I think it was very insightful. And hopefully, we've addressed a lot of the key questions that international e-com sellers are asking when looking to make that jump into Europe, which is exactly what we're here for. So thanks, Drew.
Fantastic. No worries. Thanks for joining me. And look, this was the E-com Expander Secrets podcast. There's lots of content online. If you just Google Global E-commerce Experts or Expand, you can find out more about what we spoke about today as individual services and subjects. As I mentioned, feel free consultation, reach out to some of us and we can support your expansion. Thanks for joining. Take care and we'll see you in the next one.